For the majority of my life, I ran away from my feelings. I learned as a little kid, early on, since the age of 10 years old, every time I felt hurt, every time I felt any type of way, I would hit myself in the face. And I would say things like, "You better stop, you stupid bitch." And I would stop. I wouldn't feel anything.
Whoever the meanest dude was that was getting out of prison at the time, that was gonna come into my mother's life and control the flow of narcotics, that's who the boss was at Mom's house. Dangerous things going on that the next day when you go to school and all the rest of the kids are talking about like Bart Simpson and like the door got kicked in and you got tied up with phone cords last night and people were there to steal dope and money, but you can't say that to the kids that are talking about Bart Simpson, right?
I was physically abused and sexually abused as a kid, and I never told anybody.
Going through that as a kid, when you just have people let you down, especially when you try to express to them a situation and they don't get it or they take it serious or whatever. But the way to express that was not to express it, but just go through living life violently. That's what it was.
You know, certain type of people see that in you. It's an opportunity for them. It's a weakness.
You know, everybody on my mom's side of the family would talk garbage about him in front of me. You know, call him a loser, a deadbeat, he's no good. And they would use a lot of cuss words when they said it. And then every time I got in trouble, they'd tell me I was just like my dad. So all those things coupled together, yeah, I feel shame. Not only for the things that happened to me, but for things that I've done as well.
The fact that I haven't seen my son, who I had custody of since he was born, and at 6 years old, I had to leave him and go to prison because of my bad decisions. And here I am giving him trauma. I passed on the trauma.
Shame actually was rage. How could you make me do something like that? All those feelings, all they did was harm me.
Hey, man, good to see you, bro. Oh, man.
How you doing, right?
Good, bro. Oh, man. When I saw Lawrence and Paul, woo, we met in the circle. We met in the silence. I was at Folsom State Prison, and they had just let us off of Fish Row, and I just ran out to the yard. It was like overwhelming because you saw all these inmates, people working out, people arguing, people playing dominoes. Then I saw this trail of like 5 white people walking in a single file line, like moseying through. And they go to the Greystone Chapel, the church. I'm like, what's going on? And I was curious, so I walk into the chapel, and the inmates, the men are setting up chairs in a circle. And then I look at the yard, it's chaos. I look inside of the chapel, it's peace and like this ritual and serenity. I look outside at the yard, and I look in the chapel, and I say, okay, this is where I want to be.
Let's do it. Let's close our eyes when we're ready. Take a deep breath. Feel our feet flat on the floor. Let the air go out slowly.
Okay, this is the way the practice is supposed to work. Sit in a comfortable position, just letting thoughts go in your mind, and you're not paying attention. Well, I mean, the thoughts are trying to get your attention, but your thing is to just listen to God. So God is the silence in between the thoughts.
My first experience doing centering prayer was not the greatest. I thought I had to like turn my mind off where I had no thoughts at all. And I just found it frustrating that I couldn't do that. And so I thought I was doing it wrong.
The thoughts are always taking you away. So while you're sitting there, the thought is, you're sitting there and you're like this, and the thought is taking you to thought. You know, it might be a terrible thought, like something that happened to you when you were a child, or something that happened to somebody that you loved. But as you just sit there, you know, pretty soon you're able to not react physically or mentally or emotionally. So the story is just going. So as the story takes you away, grabs you, whatever, anger, whatever, resentment, whatever. But in between that thought and the next thought, there's silence. And in that silence, you can kind of hear God's voice. I mean, it's magical for me because it's God healing you, but in his own language. And God's language for me is silence, but it's a silence that really says something to you.
After the silence, after we sit for a number of minutes, Ray introduces a subject. And then it will activate something within someone in the group, and then we'll start dialoguing.
We'll have a topic, shame or guilt or love or forgiveness.
That day, he was speaking about shame. And it really struck me because I've done a lot of self-reflection. I've done a lot of groups in prison, self-help groups in prison, and this is a topic that we don't speak about more. We go around shame. We talk a lot about the actions, but we don't talk about why. And I really sat there and I listened to him about shame and the emotions of shame and how it affects our life. And it was the first time I heard it, and I wanted more. And I just kept coming.
What's the most difficult topic? I think the most difficult topic for all of us is toxic shame. Not only did you do something bad, but you are bad. You know, you're just a bad person.
It's dark. It's very, very, very painful. I've sat calling myself meditating and tears just running down my face because of not only what I felt towards myself, but the harm I've done to others. Yeah. Because I didn't know how to deal with what was going on within me.
I started seeing the childhood traumas that I didn't even realize were there in the first place. And so that was kind of like scary, like Josh was saying, it's scary because it's like, man, what do I do with this?
Mom and Dad are arguing. There they are in the living room arguing. And so I was scared to death. I still remember that fear. And I remember that fear every time something comes up. I hate violence. I can't stand violence. And I became violent. It continued to fester and fester and fester because I didn't know how to address it. I didn't know how to be who I was supposed to be.
And I start trying to build a callus over those emotions, start trying to use anger, hatred as a way to control my own emotional content. And what I realized after years and years of wrestling with those tears, those uncontrollable tears, is just grief. I never allowed myself to experience the grief of domestic violence or the grief of, familial suicide or, You know, you do things to people that haunt you. Decades later, you start to feel like, you know, I've forfeited my own soul, some of the stuff I've done to people. So I know what it's like to run away from that grief, run away from those emotions. I just don't want to live like that anymore.
I had this experience within the meditation, and honestly, most of the time it's like I'm getting attached to every thought, and it's dragging me down this rabbit hole. I never felt like I'm any good at this. I'm sitting through it so I can participate in the conversation. I don't know when things kind of shifted. I did have one experience of like just feeling like a tenderness. Every day you're doing push-ups and this so that you can be like tough, so nothing can get to you. You know, the state of California tried force for 20 years and it didn't work. But like that tenderness, that feeling like saying you're okay, man. You're all right. You're not. You're not that bad a guy, man. Even if you've done some bad stuff. And look, everybody in that circle, like, shit, everybody in the world needs to feel a little bit of that, man.
It was entering into the silence and analyzing these feelings of rejection, of fear, of hurt, of feeling lonely, of feeling afraid, of feeling violated, of feeling not good enough, not tough enough, not masculine enough. But it was about after 6 months of sitting and centering prayer and hearing these guys talk about their pain and their shame and why they actually are afraid and angry and why they committed their crimes.
I had just about the worst role models that you could have. Like when I look in my toolbox, man, I got one tool, and that's to not feel vulnerable because I'm being aggressive. And so now you're on defense and you're vulnerable, and now I don't feel like I don't feel weak. If that's the only tool you got, you learn to use it pretty good, but it's not adequate.
In the past, I was never able to look within myself. Never, because I was always afraid of the way I felt about it when I would do it. And I recognize now why I was so bitter and so angry at the whole world and everybody else, because I would hold all these things in, and any little thing would trigger me to act either violently, turn me to drugs, or any kind of criminal behavior.
Because we all came to prison because we acted out of the fear, of the shame. So we're all suffering from the same condition. We're trying to escape ourselves.
My thoughts would tell me all kind of crazy things about life, about what someone did, about the past, about me wanting revenge, about what I need to do to make things right. And that's what's so liberating about centering prayer and learning how to sit still with yourself, is that you have a space now where you could look at your thoughts and say, what the fuck am I thinking? What the fuck is that? Nah, that's not right. And it leads you to better decisions.
As you can be over here with all the nonsense, or you can be over here as a man with other men who decide to change their lives and move forward in life.
I tried numerous of things, try to deal with this pain. But when I came to this class right here and spoke about it, it healed me.
I love myself for who I am today, and making peace with myself, I think that it helps me make peace with other people.
Now I feel that sense of calmness. There's this sense of
weight lifted off my shoulders.
I'm probably, with the exception of being in prison, the happiest I've ever been.
Each and every one of these guys in here is going through a struggle that I thought that I was the only one that was going through it. It just like opened my eyes, as in, you're not alone.
There is such a monumental relief, and there is such a freedom in it. And it's not a magic wand, it's not a silver bullet, it's not a shot of whiskey, it's not something that you realize or understand or grab onto right away. It's a process, but the results are very, very real, and they're not an accident. You know, there used to be this old ad on TV, and the catch line was, "The mind is a terrible thing to waste." Well, in my case, you could drop the last two words. You know, mind is just a terrible thing. It's like one horrible memory after another horrible memory. And then by doing this process, I finally realized, you know what? Those thoughts aren't me. That's the junk that I've picked up over the decades. And I can let that stuff go. And I can start putting that stuff in its rightful place. And I can start tapping into much more important things like faith, hope, love, joy, courage, wisdom. You know, they're all in there, and it's funny, they all have their own language, and their first language is silence. And that's just the craziest thing. That would have never occurred to me prior to tapping into this thing.
You really don't have to be mad. You don't have to be sad. You know, I mean, that's the normal reaction, but you get a chance to choose your own reaction. But as you're sitting there in silence, and the silence is healing all of that, the stuff that would just make you, that would turn you and twist you, it doesn't turn you and twist you anymore. And then you can, I guess, make a conscious choice of how you want to respond. Just by having access to this practice, we get to tune into something that's not judgmental. You know, a lot of people that have been through what we've been through, and they haven't had the benefit of this center and prayer. They're still walking around feeling guilty. And here we are coming out of prison, probably with some of us have some pretty serious offenses. But we're not looking down on ourselves, and we're not looking down on other people in our position. We're not looking down on anybody that's going through anything, because we're realizing that circumstances had molded that behavior, but it molded that behavior while we were asleep. But now we're back awake, but we're not driven by, like we were saying, that false self, something, the ego that wants to prove something, that wants to, we just want to experience the joy of living. And just by having that intention, our life turns beautiful. What do you call that thing? A paradigm shift, where you think the whole world is against you, and now the whole world seems interactive everywhere I go. But all I see is like goodness and people enjoying life. And before, my life was based on how much what I had, material shit, you know, cars, clothes, females, all this. And that stuff is not important. What's important is the relationships. Man, you don't know. Then again, you do know how good it feels to sit here with you guys, man, and know what we've been through, man, and know that, you know, you brought this light to us, and now we're basking in this light. It's almost like a person with the miracle cure, and he's trying to promote it. Look, all you have to do is this, and everybody's looking at you. No, it can't be that simple, you know. But it is.
You know, Lawrence, that dude has a way of summing things up in such a profound way. Yeah, that's it. It does make you feel like you're gonna be okay.
That's how I felt about Polly, because it's like a lifelong friend. We built such a bond, you know, like in centering prayer. We built such a bond in the yard and in the youth diversion that it's indescribable, because you go through things in prison that people out here don't understand. You go through the depression, you go through the anxieties, the bitterness, and it's only what they can understand. And so when you see someone out here that has walked in your shoes, we say, wow, you know, he's made it too. He's gonna be okay, I'm gonna be okay. And we're all doing okay.